Aloha, movie nerds. Welcome to Why It's Great. I'm your host, Matthew Salanoa, and I made this podcast to celebrate movies and what makes them great. Today is a little bit of a special episode. I'm talking about a very few select scenes of one of my favorite Batman films, Batman Returns. I've got this queued up. I'm going to be watching a few scenes and basically giving commentary on them. First up, we're looking straight up at the opening of this movie. And here we go. This opening is so fantastic looking. This is such a huge, opulent house. And yet we only spend time in this one room, which is very good writing and storytelling. But look at this, how this first shot. We're close on the actor who's the father of the Penguin. And he has the monocle. And the camera turns and we follow him for a little bit. And then he goes into the distance and we just hear the screaming. So the storytelling is very strong here. We're close on characters because they're significant. Like the opening scene, we are close up on Penguin's father, right? Because the opening is told from the parent's perspective, specifically the father who hears his wife scream in terror and then goes off into the darkness and he screams in terror as well. The camera work holds back and allows us to be filled with the emotion that the story is telling, that both picture and sound are telling us the story. Danny Elfman's music, as dramatic as it is telling that story as well. It's communicating the emotional journey. We're close on Penguin's father because he's essentially the main character of the opening sequences, where from his perspective, this child that he's produced with his wife is a monster, and this penguin's eating a freaking cat. I want to get this amazing, stunning shot of Gotham City in the background and this amazing sets. Bo Welch is the production designer, and hats off. I always imagined in my head that was baby Bruce being walked, the White Knight versus the Dark Knight, symbolically speaking. And here we go to the Moses title sequence, which is just amazing to me. And I love that little last look. They still feel bad. They were terrified of him as a kid, but they still feel bad about what they've done. And then you hear the penguin, young baby penguins screaming in terror as he falls into the sewer. What a shocking, horrific ending. With that opening title sequence, when I think about making movies, I think about that. This opening title sequence is so crazy and beautiful and dark, and it's telling a story without words. And this is what I want to do. I love that it's using miniatures and all this, but the photography, the way they shoot it, it looks like it's full size. Danny Elfman's music is so emotional and engaging. And his music is as well is telling the story. This movie looks like an Alex Ross painting. It just happens to be moving in live action somehow. All of this photography is so fantastic. And then this shot in particular, I have always absolutely loved this shot, where we get this little silhouette of the carriage as it goes under the waterfall. And that's just such an amazing shot to me. I can't define why it's so beautiful. But Tim Burton, he was an art student. He knows paintings. He knows art styles. That's why you see such dramatic, distinct art choices in his movies, because he's a student of painting. He's a student of animation, and he's a student of art. I was a huge fan of The Prince of Egypt as a kid. I really love the Moses story. So to me, I know this throws people off, a lot of people, especially, comic book fans, like, why the hell is this a Moses story? But to me, because I love Prince of Egypt, I'm reading this 100% as amazing because it's the reverse Moses story. But when you look at this sort of creepy, long journey, this terrifying journey, and it must be terrifying for this baby, even though it is the baby penguin. It must be terrifying for us. Like, I don't know where I'm going or where I'm going to end up. And he just happens to end up in this derelict, abandoned zoo where the last ones left are these penguins. So the penguin is deposited to actual penguins. And it's mad, it's crazy. It's a little more calm than the Prince of Egypt, where that baby carriage is literally being rocked between boats and narrowly dodging alligators. It's very exciting because Prince of Egypt for kids is more of an action adventure movie than anything else. To me, Penguin, he's pretty accurate in the cartoon, right? He is just a monocled rich guy who's committing crimes because he can, and it's just not that interesting. I think this whole notion, Tim Burton's notion of the penguin being the reverse Moses, he in fact rejected by the Pharaoh and sent to live with the slaves, or in this case, the animals of a derelict zoo. But I love this notion of like Bruce as a prince of Gotham, and then this is the rejected prince, and the movie is really a battle between princes. One of them will be the king by the end of the story, or a battle between brothers. It's Moses versus Ramses II. That's really how I see the movie. Again, this is why I say that, the battles that Bruce Wayne faces in the Tim Burton movies are unspoken battles, because he's not going to give you a speech about why he's doing what he's doing. But nonetheless, the battle is happening. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Batman and Penguin meet for the first time. Batman's already beat up a bunch of Penguin's minions, and they run into each other, and Batman asks, "Are you enjoying your handiwork?"
Admiring your handiwork, touring the riot scene, gravely assessing the devastation, upstanding mayor stuff. You're not the mayor.
Seeing these two personalities up against each other, the arrogant depravity of the Penguin versus the cool moral authority of Batman.
You don't really think you'll win, do you? Things change.
Who knows where this scene could have gone, because then Catwoman interrupts. Meow, and blows up the Shrek store.
What? Who is that?
When we get to Catwoman's side, and she is not the Selena Kyle from the comics at all. She's Max Schreck's assistant secretary, whatever you want to call it. If anything, I feel like Catwoman's story is like the pre-Me Too movement. It's a Me Too movement inside of a movie, where it's really commenting on some of the disgusting predatory behavior of men, us versus them, sort of predatory society that existed. At the very least in these cultures, it's a very real thing. And so Selena Kyle, although not comic book accurate, is taken in this movie as a kind of pre-Me Too figure, after Max Schreck kills her for doing a very Catwoman thing of figuring out his password and thus hacking and getting information on his business practices that are completely illegal. there's kind of that defiance built into her character. So her taking that specific form of, I'm not going to be one of these victims, and I'm now going to be a force of nature and a source of destruction as well. And by having that be her issue, it gives her a very specific goal and hill to climb up, that Max Schreck is her specific villain. Max Schreck is not the villain to the Penguin. That's Batman to him. But in her case, she's after Christopher Walken's character. She wants revenge. And her first act is to both steal from and blow up Christopher Walken's business that's right there in the town center. She takes issue with Batman, and she sides with Penguin because she can't stand that Batman pushed her around. And maybe she's just fighting him because she feels that she can or wants to. It doesn't really matter because she loses her mind. I mean, you look at the beautiful storytelling about, she has this pink apartment, and then after she gets killed and bitten by cats, she comes back and she paints the whole thing black. So you get this huge emotional journey for her character. And that's the type of storytelling that I really love. So with that being in mind, let's check out this scene that I've really wanted to talk about. Now, this in particular is not just pontifications, but this is going to be examining the filmmaking choices, okay? So if you're a filmmaker, this is where you kind of want to tune in and pay attention, especially if you're learning and new and you don't really know anything. You want to understand, how do the big boys do it? This scene where Max Schreck, Christopher Walken, kills Selina Kyle, this scene is such a superb scene in terms of how directing works, okay? And this is how you tell a story visually. Note, the dialogue is doing it as well, but the director doesn't just let the dialogue do everything. That's not how directing works. Directing is painting with visuals and emotion. So let's look at this scene. Let's watch this scene together. You got Max Schreck walking up the stairs. He's darkly lit. That's very creepy. We're walking up to Selina Kyle. Pause. He's dark. He's behind her. She's in the foreground. But we're kind of almost eye level. This is the first thing I want to point out. When I was in cinematography class at Academy of Art University, one of the things they talked about was how you should never be eye level. You should always be above or below. And then the question is, why? Because when it comes to shooting characters, and this is very important to why I'm talking about this scene, if you're a director, when it comes to shooting characters, when it comes to shooting scenes, when it comes to telling a story, you have to understand one thing above all else is power dynamics in your framing. Where you put the camera is a huge part of how you tell your story. What makes good directing? What makes good visual storytelling? I could not sum it up better than this particular sequence. Okay, so in this scene, like I said, Max Schreck is going to kill Selina Kyle. And we start off with a very creepy shot. Christopher Walken is very underlit. We have this very foreboding silhouette of him as he's approaching Selina Kyle, who is in the light. She is softly lit. When you take cinematography class, you know that there are rules. When you shoot women, their faces are typically softer in features than men, so you light them softly. That's what it fleshes out their features and shows them in quite literally the best light. And men have typically more angular faces, and so they get harsher lighting. Based on your distance, you adjust the lights. So that's just a little technical thing, but the camera placement, power dynamics is everything, especially in a scene like this where a murder is taking place. We have our couple shots up front are a bit creepy, so the coming up behind her shot. But then, as this scene starts, it's not quite that creepy. So let's just look at it together, okay? He enters the light. He says, "What are you doing?" He scares her, and she's talking to him. We're not at eye level, but we are closer to eye level. Both characters are basically on the same level with each other. She's still lower than him. The camera is what? It's looking down on her. He is still in a power position in terms of blocking. But if you look at his performance, he's very relaxed. He's almost checking her out the way he's like, "What you doing?" You know what I mean? So that's just something to be noted. And why did the camera change? Why are we in close-up now? Because what she says is important. The importance of the close-up. I have talked about this in other videos. I'm bringing it up again. How industrious. How did you open the protected files? We're in close-up because we're in conflict. When they're side by side, no conflict. It's kind of funny. What you doing? Oh, I'm just working. Oh, okay. What you working on? A close-up. Well, I found out that what you're doing is fucking illegal, bitch. Close up on him. And how did you find that out? Close up indicates importance of information. And when we cut back to this wider angle that was initially the 2-shot, we see that his face has changed. And remember, that shot's also what? Kind of at eye level. It's kind of at a relatable level. This is a character I can relate to. The power dynamic is friendly toward the audience. But his change of expression tells you that the situation has changed. He is no longer happy, and this is no longer going to be the dynamic of the scene. But now we are low. Selena Kyle is sitting down, and we're low looking up at Max Schreck, right? So the power dynamic has changed. This is not just because people need to move around to keep the camera interesting. He's trying to be cool with the camera angle and the lower lighting like you do at the campfire when you're telling a scary story, another indicator of a villainous figure. Again, this framing is not a friendly framing. It's telling us he is someone to be feared in this scene. We cut to Selena Kyle, and it's looking down on her. And what does the looking down framing mean from Alfred Hitchcock? Who knows? Who's watching? Who knows? And it doesn't matter because this isn't live, so I can't see if you answer correctly anyway. Alfred Hitchcock uses the looking down framing to suggest that someone's going to die in the movie Psycho and some of his other films as well. I'm not a huge Alfred Hitchcock student, so I don't really know. But that's one of the lessons I do know about. Literally, the shot choice you choose has a meaning, but also the lighting, which is, again, lower because it's supposed to be a little scarier, is making her have the Catwoman eyes. So the lighting is also suggesting what's going to happen in the future. So none of this is a mistake. You have to understand this both as audience member and as filmmaker. These things are not mistakes. Your power plant's not actually going to generate power. It's going to suck power. And why are we in close-up on Christopher Walken? Because this is the thing he's actually afraid of. We have been building to this with our framing choices. Literally each framing choice is a choice that builds us to this moment of absolute terror in Christopher Walken's eyes. That, oh my God, she knows my plot. She has to go. The story keeps moving, both in performance and in writing and in framing. What happens in her close-up now is that she is aware that she just said something that she wasn't supposed to say. She knows something she's not supposed to know. It didn't even occur to her when she was looking up the information. She thought she was just doing her job. And now she's realized, oh no, I did too good of a job. This is probably not going to end well. This meeting is not going to end well. And we back into darkness. Both characters go into darkness. And then now we're over the shoulder, but the camera is still low on Christopher Walken because he is the powerful one. And the lighting is still up on him because he is the scary one. Now the lighting is looking down on Selena Kyle. Now we're on his close-up looking down on her. And even though the window was in the wider angle, it's almost a reveal the way we come up to the window, that he's positioning her. They're not just moving because she's scared. He's walking forward to make her walk back. And then when, again, we get in close-up, when she knows, like the dialogue isn't saying, you're going to kill me? You see her expression. She's terrified. And she's trying to look for any way out. Intimidate me, bully me, make me feel bad. But you see in her face, she's fucking mortified. And she's like, it's not like you can just kill me. Actually, it's a lot like that. But here, although we're closer and we're more to eye level, we're still lower. We're below his eye line because he is the power figure in this scene. Everything is about storytelling, the way the camera moves up and down, how you show the dynamics of power is a huge part of getting the audience to feel it. You would not necessarily know it as an audience member, but you feel it. You feel it. Why? Because when you're a kid and you look up and someone's scary, it's 10 times as scary as when you're an adult and you maybe slightly look up at someone who intimidates you. That inherent feeling is captured by the lower photography framing. It's framing that is very distinctly playing on your instincts. This is what filmmakers do. This is what all filmmakers do. It doesn't matter if they're a documentarian or if they're the news media. It doesn't matter. Anyone who picks up a camera and shoots something is doing this whether they know it or not. Everyone has a story, and how you communicate that story, how effectively you communicate it, is shown in scenes like this, where you may not even realize it. But the reason why you watch one movie and feel that is so bland, and watch another movie and go, that was amazingly exciting and exhilarating, is choices like this, like where the camera goes, is so important. I highly recommend, if you're learning how to make movies or interested in learning how to make movies, to watch commentaries, especially for movies that came out in the 90s and early 2000s, because you'll get the actual filmmaker who made the movie being very candid. In this time, this was the original podcast before podcasting, was just how candid filmmakers would be, where, the studio didn't let me do this, or the studio recut my movie like this, and I don't really agree with it, but this is the movie, this is the way it is. You know, their honesty, their frankness about their experience, but also all the reasons they did the things they did. And you can pick and choose whether you agree with anything or not. But if you want to learn how to make movies, I think that's really a great place to start. And this is so crucial because everything I'm talking about with how this scene is directed and shot comes from film theory. It comes from understanding the principles of what the camera is capable of doing. How if you pick this angle, it creates an emotion automatically out of your audience. These are choices. They're not accidents. These are choices. The way the lighting works, the way the framing works, where the camera is, the power dynamic. All of this is film theory stuff. It is the why. Why are you putting the camera here? You know, this is technique. This is, a completely trainable technique. If you really know your film theory, if you really know why you put an angle where you put it, these angles, even of the faces, they mean something. They communicate something. You're storytelling through the visual. The dialogue isn't the only thing that should be carrying the weight of your storytelling. And Batman Returns does all of this film theory in spades. It uses every camera angle to tell these emotional journeys. That is why, for the people that it works for, that's why it works. And for the people that it doesn't work for, it just feels garish and unnecessary. But all things being the same, the dark filmmaking style of Tim Burton is here for these moments to work, because Tim Burton is not afraid to scare you. Tim Burton is not afraid of the scary world of fantasy. Like Guillermo del Toro, it's a world in which he happily explores. That's his world. And the lighting, the set design, it all tells you that this is really going to be a certain kind of journey. It's going to be dark, it's going to be slow, it's going to be moody, it's going to be creepy, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's telling you that right up front with the beginning of the movie.
You're just jealous because I'm a genuine freak and you have to wear a mask. You might be right.
To me, Batman Returns is Batman's perspective on the world, is that it's a dark, bleak place where you can't really trust anyone's intentions, because Batman doesn't know anything about the Penguin until the news where the Penguin saves the mayor's baby. When he looks up, when he does his research on the Penguin, finds out that it's pretty clear from the stories surrounding the Penguin, children have gone missing, and somehow this Penguin person is involved. Penguin becomes a person of interest to Batman, where at first Batman felt incredibly sympathetic. You see that when the news comes on and Penguin's talking about how he was abandoned. You see Michael Keaton's performance. He feels terrible and he feels really bad. Like, I feel bad about his parents. Batman is emotionally connected to the Penguin's story, even though he's not emotionally involved with it, but he is connected to it. And so once he starts investigating the Penguin and finds out that not only is he real, but actually the facts don't side up with him, and it seems like he might be a criminal and he might be up to something. It's really more of a disappointment for Batman that he, for 1 second, when he finds out about the Penguin, thinks, I have a brother in this world. I have someone else who has a tragic backstory. He's not dressed up as a monster. He is a monster, but it's a Batman. I am Batman. Like, I am this beast. I am this monster. For just 1 second, you see in his face that he feels like he's found a kindred spirit. That, to me, is another thing that adds to Batman Returns, is seeing that little glimmer of hope in his face. Like, I have a brother. And then when it comes to Catwoman, I have a girlfriend. I have someone I love. And in the very end, my true face is off. Now you see the face everyone else sees. I could not be more vulnerable to you at all. So even though it's not spoken, Batman loses a potential brother and then loses a potential lover. And that's why Batman Returns is such a good film to me, is because although it's unspoken, it is a tragedy. It's a tragic film. This person who doesn't speak much, who doesn't get out much, when he finally thinks he finds a couple people that are like him, he quickly finds that they are actually far less like him than he can ever possibly accept.
I wasn't born in the sewer, you know. I come from like you. And like you, I want some respect.
And that's the real tragedy of Batman Returns. So while on top of these wonderful filmmaking things I've caught, I've always loved the emotion of the character of Batman. That's always been something that was understated, unspoken, but you feel it if you're paying attention. Anyway, that's what I got to say on Batman Returns. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Aloha.